Good evening and welcome to our Tuesday Talks webinar. This is our first webinar of the 2018 season. My name is Susan Brown and I am the Associate Director of Parent and Family Programs. It is our pleasure to be hosting this evening's webinar, Tips and Tools for Living Off Campus. This evening you'll be hearing from Rebecca Regan, Director of Off-Campus Student Services. At the end of the presentation, after Rebecca speaks, you will notice that on the right-hand side of your screen is a Q&A. We will be able to take questions at the end of the presentation. So, hi Rebecca, thank you for joining us tonight. We appreciate you being here.
Well, hello everybody and good evening. My name is Rebecca and I am here today to share with you lots of information that will hopefully help your student and help you guide your student in their process of moving and living off campus. And I want to share with you where we are located. Off-Campus Student Services is located in the Curry Student Center, and I hope that all of you have maybe visited that building during your time of visiting here at Northeastern. We are on the second floor, so we're right in a good central area for students to come and visit us. And you can contact us by this phone number and by our email address. And our website is northeastern.edu/offcampus. We are a small office. It's myself, the director, and our assistant director, whose name is Mallory Perna. And we have a number of student staff who also work in our office. So we are always available to answer any questions that you have. So if you have questions, as Susan mentioned, please type them in at the end and we can answer them. But if you think of any others or want to chat with us personally, please call us or email us and we can certainly talk through any questions that you have. All right, so I want to go over the 4 main services that we provide to our students. Apartment hunting advice. We help them connect to landlords and roommates. A program called Lease Genius, and we also help with problems, any problems that students have even after they move in, anything dealing with their lease and their landlord or roommate. Okay, so to start off, a couple of quiz questions for you all. Percent of undergrads who do not live on campus? 50%, which means that there are lots of students, thousands of students, of Northeastern students who live off campus, and the majority of our grad students live off campus, as well as other institutions in the area. So you can imagine that there is a very large student population who lives off campus, and this is one of the reasons why we provide such significant services to our students because of the numbers. Okay, and how many live in 1.5 mile radius of campus? 5,000. So lots of those students who live off campus live very, very close to campus. So it's a very close proximity where a lot of students live. All right, and their major needs. Okay, quality of housing, knowledge of their rights, and campus happenings. And so we try to make sure that we address all of these major needs all throughout the year. Okay, so I want to go over several of our resources that are available to your student as well as all of you. We have a handbook that has lots of great information, and because we have a hard copy in the office, we know that a lot of people want to access it online. So you can go to this URL, tinyurl.com/NU Off-Campus Handbook. And you can find all kinds of information there, a lot of what I'm going to be talking about today. We also have our website, northeastern.edu/offcampus, so I definitely encourage you to go there and poke around, see what is on there. We have a specific parent page as well that will help. As I mentioned, our office, we're located in the Curry Student Center. And we have student staff members who are called community ambassadors. And these are the peer resources and advocates that are available for your student to talk to. So myself and our assistant director are there with lots of knowledge and lots of experience, but these student staff members are also there to give peer-to-peer advice and to give examples of some of the things that they have experienced. They coordinate workshops and events, and they also lead a number of the community service projects that we have. Okay, our first topic is apartment hunting advice. So one of the first things that we really encourage students to do is to figure out which neighborhood they want to live in. So decide how close to campus you want to live and how much rent is good for them. And use our online housing database to search for housing in the desired neighborhood. I'm going to go over this in a minute, so don't worry, I'll give you a little tutorial. But you can use this database to find, to search for housing in a specific neighborhood. And some of the neighborhoods where students, where the majority of students live is Fenway, Back Bay, and Mission Hill, and those are the closest ones to campus. And you can read more about our neighborhoods on our website and also on that handbook that I mentioned. And the other thing your student will want to do is to find a roommate. Oftentimes students want to live alone and can live in a studio, but they can be more expensive than a shared apartment. So many students live with roommates, whether that's a friend or someone that they've just met. But they'll want to decide how many roommates do they want to live with. Do they want to just live one, or do they want to live with more? Just keep in mind that the more students they live with, the more conflict there can be. So they need to think about their own living style. No more than 4 undergrads can live together in one apartment. It is a law here in Boston. It's an ordinance. And the reason is to keep landlords from overcrowding apartments with more students than who should actually be living there. So it's to protect students from overcrowding. Use the online housing database. You can also use this to find roommates. And students will post an online profile about themselves, and so students can search for other students by using certain criteria to see who might match their living style. And does your student have an academic program, like a Facebook page or other way that they can connect with classmates in their particular program? Okay, so the housing database, this is separate. I want to make it clear that this is separate from our website, our office website. So we have our office website, and this is our housing database, which can be found at appsearch.northeastern.edu. And this is what it looks like. And some of the features is it has a housing tab, a roommate tab, and you can find realtors on here as well. And you can your student can sign up for free, and you as parents can get a guest account for 30 days. So if you want to see what this database looks like, or you want to help your student in the apartment search process, I encourage you to hit the sign up, the little red sign up button, and to request a guest account for yourself. That guest account will be approved on our end, usually within 48 hours. And what we will do is we will ask for confirmation that your student is a student of Northeastern. So you should be able to receive that guest account within just a couple of days. And you can also find sublets on this. This is when a student is subletting an apartment from another student, and I'll get into more details in a minute. Okay, so subletting, decide if that's a good option for your student if they plan to go home for the summer, they want to study abroad or go on co-op outside of Boston, they don't wish to purchase furniture, or they don't want to sign a year lease. And they can find a sublet on the database I took a little screenshot of the search field on the database. So you can select sublet. You can see it's in red on the right-hand side under the search fields. And so what happens is students who are on a lease and have an apartment for the year who might be going away on co-op, say they're going to Chicago and they don't want to pay their rent while they're away, they would post a listing of this available sublet on the database. your student wants to go home for the summer and doesn't want to be on a lease. So they find this listing on the database and they connect with this other student and they live in that student's apartment or bedroom for the semester. And that's what a sublet is. If you have more questions about subletting or you want your student to come in and see us to create a plan to find a sublet or to post a sublet, we can help your student do that. There is also the option of temporary housing. So if your student has a lease but doesn't start for a couple of months, or is just looking for that bridge between the time when on-campus housing ends and when their lease starts, we have a whole list of temporary housing on our website, and that is at northeastern.edu/offcampus/temporary-housing. And these are all options in the local area that are less expensive than the hotels here in Boston, and they can range anywhere from a couple of days to a month or more. Some of the things your students should consider when they are looking for housing is to pick their roommates carefully. They want to make sure that the people who they are living with are going to pay the rent and are going to be compatible with them in terms of their living style. They also want to plan for first, last, security, and broker fee. So each of these is 1 month's rent, and most of the realtors in the area will request this amount of money once the lease is signed. Okay, I think our slide is back up. Okay, those are the only 4 fees that realtors can request. It's first month, last month's rent, the security deposit, and the broker fee. If there are any other fees that they're requesting, they're illegal, okay, most of the time. If you have any questions about a particular fee that a realtor is requesting from you, please call us and ask. If a realtor is asking you for an application fee, the only time this is legitimate is if that application fee is for a credit check, okay? And normally credit checks are anywhere between $40 and $60. If it's $100, $150 application fee, it's not legitimate. Again, call us if you have any questions about what's being asked of you to pay. Review the financial aid award that your student is receiving, because oftentimes either their financial aid or their federal loan can go towards off-campus housing. So have them talk with their financial aid advisor about this and what might go for being able to pay for living expenses. Realtors will ask for a cosigner. Since your student is a student and does not receive a income, they will want to make sure that they have a cosigner in case they stop paying rent or in case anything happens. Most of the time it's a parent or a relative who is the cosigner, and they will do a credit check on that cosigner. So if you have any questions about this, let us know, but that is common practice to ask for one. The standard lease is September 1 to August 31st. You can find the start of leases outside of September 1st, but this is just when the majority of leases is starting on September 1st. And unfurnished is the norm. A lot of students will purchase furniture from other students. Please be very mindful of soft fabric furniture. Do not let your student take any couches or chairs that have soft fabric on them off the sidewalk when they move in, please, because they're most likely bed bugs. So please just be aware of that, and only let them really take hard furniture from other students. Again, this is another reason why many students like to sublet, because then they don't have to purchase their own furniture. And then have them consider, is subletting an option for your student? If they feel like, or they know that they are going to go on co-op for the semester in the future, they want to make sure that there is subletting allowed in their lease. And so make sure that clause exists in their lease before they sign it, if they know they're going to go away to another city for co-op or study abroad. Okay, so all of this information I'm going over, I hope you all relay to your student, but to have them hear it directly from us, I encourage you to encourage them to come to our Living Off-Campus workshops. And these are going to be held starting next Tuesday, so we'll have them on January 23rd and the 29th, and then February 12th and 21st. Please keep in mind that the location for Tuesday the 23rd in Shillman, that location is changing. So please FYI, we will be updating our information and we'll be advising students of the new location. But it's a great opportunity for your students to come learn all this information and ask questions. Okay, next topic is connecting students to landlords and roommates. We have an annual apartment fair that happens in February, and this year it is on February 7th from 4 to 7, and this happens in the indoor quad. This is a fantastic opportunity for your student to come and meet realtors in the area. So the database that I mentioned before, this database has a number of realtors on there that list properties that your student can find. There are many realtors in the area, but these are realtors who have proven to treat our students well. Now, I say that with the caveat that at any time if you're working with a realtor, if you're concerned about the way that they're treating your student or the things that they're saying or any fees, please call us and tell us, because this is how we make sure that the realtors are treating your students well and are not doing anything illegal, such as illegal fees. So please let us know if there's anything that you're concerned about. But this fair is a great opportunity for students to come, talk to realtors, all in one room, be able to set up times when they can go see apartments, and it just saves them a lot of time. We know that students are very, very busy with their commitments and their classes, and so this is a great opportunity. They can come for an hour, talk to 5 or 6 realtors, set up times to go see showings, go see a bunch of apartments, and hopefully find something they like. So please tell them about this and encourage them to go. Why go? I sort of went over all those reasons, but I want to go over some of the qualities of a good realtor. So if a realtor that you're working with does not meet any of these, it's a good reason to sort of question moving forward. Do they have an actual office location? Do they answer your questions? If they're evasive, if they're not answering your questions or you don't think they're being truthful, that is not a good sign. Are they showing you real available properties? This is extremely important. If a realtor shows an apartment to your student and says, this one is not available, the one upstairs is, it's just that I can't show it to you because someone's in there right now, but don't worry, it's the same condition. Absolutely not. Your student wants to make sure that they see the apartment they are going to be renting. We do not like any realtors who do this practice because your student is not aware of what the condition of that apartment actually is, and most likely it is not as good as the apartment they're seeing. Are they in good standing with the Better Business Bureau? You know, don't hesitate to look them up or look them up online for reviews. And do they pass the gut test? Does your student is having a, you know, they don't have a good feeling about them, they don't feel like they're being treated well, guess what? Move on to the next person. There's no need for loyalty here. If they don't like who they're working with, call us. We can give them some more names of some more realtors, and they can try to find someone that they like working with. Next topic, Lease Genius. This is a program that has just exploded in the last couple of years because students are finding out about it, and it's a really, really great service. Your student or you can send us the lease electronically. You can bring us the hard copy lease, and we will read that for you within 24 hours. And we are very experienced in reading leases here in the Boston area, knowing what's legal, what's not, what ambiguous language might come back to hurt the student down the road if they're not aware of what it says. So we're in the mind of reading these leases and then informing you and your student about what it says. What do you need to be aware of? Does it have that sublet clause? Is there a fee to sublet? And being able to educate your student on what fees are illegal and what are not in case anything comes up in the future. We always like to read leases before they're signed. So we highly encourage your student to, if they see an apartment they like, they get that lease and they read that lease and they bring it to us before they sign it. That way they have all the information, they know everything in that lease before they sign it. On the flip side too, if they've already signed it and they're already living there and they're not quite sure what some of the clauses mean or if a fee is legitimate, bring it to us and we'll read it and we will help them to understand what it says and to help them also understand their rights as a renter and to develop a plan moving forward as to what they can or cannot do according to what is in that lease. Okay, and so this is just, we have information on our website. So on the bottom, you'll see www.northeastern.edu/lease-genius, lease-genius. And we have lots of information about leases and about renters' rights on our website. And this is an example of a fixed-term lease. If you've never seen a typical lease here in Boston, this is what the front page looks like. So most leases here in Boston use the fixed-term lease, which is approved by the Greater Boston Real Estate Board. And everything in this fixed-term lease is all legal and fine. So what we want to make sure is everything that's in that red circle area is all filled out, all complete. All students who are living in that apartment, all of their names are on the lease. Any student who's living in an apartment who's not on the lease is not protected by the lease and can therefore be evicted at any time. So we want to make sure that anybody living there is on the lease. Many leases will have what is called an addendum at the end of this fixed-term lease. Those are the rules and regulations written by the landlord for that particular apartment. And the students will also need to sign that and agree to it. This is the section that we take particular care to because this is where a lot of the fees that realtors will put into their lease are located. And this is also where a lot of ambiguous language can be located that we want to make sure doesn't hurt your student down the road. So if your lease or if the lease for your student has an addendum, please make sure that you send it to us so we can review it. And we will certainly do that for you as quickly as possible. Okay, so the components of a lease are the name and address and contact information of the landlord. This must be on the lease. Okay, as I mentioned, all names of the tenants on the lease, the amount of rent and due date, the lease start date and end date, the name and contact information for repairs. Now, in terms of maintenance and who to call for repairs, if a property is owned by an individual landlord, the name of that landlord and contact information will be on the lease. Many apartments here in Boston are in larger buildings and can be owned by a corporation, an LLC. Well, there is an actual person that you can call with an LLC when that's on the lease. So what you want to make sure is that there is an actual phone number for maintenance that they can call if there are any questions or concerns. And also make sure that if it is an LLC or company name as the landlord, who is the name of the property manager and their phone number that your student can call if there's any questions about rent payment or anything like that. So you just want to make sure that all contact information is provided to your student. And again, the last thing is the addendum. That is often a component of the lease, and these are just the landlord's extra rules that they made up, which is why it's important to send them to us for us to review. And the last topic is help with problems. So we help many students with problems during their time off campus, whether it's with their landlord, whether it's deciphering their lease or with their roommates. We've seen a lot, not all, because we're seeing we're hearing new questions all the time, which is wonderful that so many students are coming to us. So I want to go over a couple of the common problems that we see a lot. And I want to mention these because if you are having a conversation with your student and they mention that something's going on and you feel like this is something that we could help them with, please encourage them to come talk to us, see us face to face. We know that sometimes students don't actually like to do that, but please encourage them because we love meeting with students and talking with them. So some of the common problems are quality of housing at a reasonable rate. And when you're looking for housing, we hear this all the time, that students are finding these apartments that don't seem to meet their standards for these really high rates. And what I would say is just don't let your student take the first apartment that they see. Okay, don't let them feel pressured into taking the first apartment because they feel like they're not going to find something. Make sure that they keep looking until they find something that's a quality and a rent that is reasonable. It might not be a rent that they want because it's not low enough, but it's reasonable for this area. We have on our website, under the housing tab, is a page called rates. I think it's called rental rates or rent rates. And it's a grid that lists the type of apartment, so a studio, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and in the neighborhood around Northeastern. And it will list the range that you can expect that rent to be. So if you know your son is going to be living in a 4-bedroom apartment in the Fenway area and you want to know, is this rent too high? Look at that grid and it will kind of show you what the typical range is. Okay, so back to common problems. Repairs not being completed. Repairs must be made in a timely manner. If your student's being ignored by their landlord and the repair isn't being made, if the repairs are quote unquote being made but nothing is really being done and it's not being fixed and this is going on for months, please have them come see us because we can help them come up with a plan for how to communicate with their landlord, how to tell their landlord what their rights are, and if it's to the point where the Boston Inspectional Services needs to get involved in order to get that landlord to make those repairs, we can advise the student on how to go about doing that. You have the right to a clean and sanitary safe apartment, okay? No questions asked. So if that is not happening, if you saw the apartment and it was beautiful, but then September 1st you go to move in and it is not clean, sanitary, or safe, not acceptable, okay? And at that time, you call us and we help you go through that, determine what to do and how to get inspectional services involved. Illegal fees. Oftentimes when students don't read their lease before they sign it, they might discover halfway through the lease that there is a fee that they're being charged that might be illegal. We can advise them on that. Unresponsive landlords, how to go about getting them to respond or to make those repairs or to negotiate something that's happening. Roommate conflicts. This is the most difficult one, I will admit. Roommate conflicts seem to be on the rise, and I want all of you parents to be aware of this. If you hear your son or daughter mention something in conversation about something happening with their roommate, ask them questions about whether they're communicating with their roommate. What we're finding is that what's happening is so many students are not communicating with each other, and so these conflicts are not being dealt with in a timely manner, and then they're going on for long periods of time and then getting to the point where they're hard to solve. So if you're hearing that these things are starting, please encourage your student to communicate with their roommates. And if they are having that problem and they're not sure what to do, have them come see us and we can help talk through that situation. Oftentimes it's about rent or cleanliness, things like that. And so we just want to make sure that all of your students, all of your sons and daughters are living in situations off campus that are positive and that are not causing them stress. And only people on the lease can live there. So if a friend is crashing in their apartment and not on the lease, and they decided to just have this friend so the friend could help pay rent, so it could reduce their rent, that's in violation of their lease, and that could subject them to eviction. So you just want to make sure that anybody on that lease is on it for their own protection. Okay, so scams. In the apartment search process, there are a lot of scams out there, and I want you to be aware of them in order to avoid them. Only work with people or realtors you can meet in person. A few minutes ago, I mentioned that one of the qualities of a good realtor is that they have an actual location. They have an office that you can go to. This is why. If you find a listing of an apartment, say on Craigslist, and the person says, you know, they just want to deal everything over the phone, they don't want to meet, they're asking for money before they're willing to show you the apartment, those are all signs of a possible scam. Okay, so always make sure that you can meet someone in person who can show you the actual apartment they're going to be looking at. So to that point, never rent a place you can't view in advance. Never make payments in the form of cash or MoneyGram, whether that's upfront or even when they're living there and they're paying rent. Say your son or daughter is, you know, a server at a restaurant and they make a lot of tips. Don't let them pay rent in cash because it can't be traced. A landlord can say, I didn't receive that money. I don't know where it went, and there's no way to trace it. So just make sure that everything is either by check or by electronic transfer, which is what a lot of landlords prefer these days. If it feels wrong, it probably is. If you're having a conversation with a landlord or a realtor and you have that gut feeling, call us, okay? And we can talk through it to determine if this is something that seems to be a scam or is more legitimate. And use our office, our housing database. Okay, because this database has these realtors that are legitimate, that are in the area, and that we can hold accountable for their actions. Because they're on our database, we do hold them accountable. So please go through that database when looking for apartments. And these are some things that you can do to help your students through this process. Talk with them about the housing search process. Ask them questions. Where are they looking? What is the realtor like? Who are they? What does the apartment look like? Make sure that they are telling you these answers. And something that I would encourage you to do is look at our website. Look through that renter's rights page. Inform yourself about what are the things that are the legal protections of your student. And then that way, when you go to ask them questions, you can be informed as to what are the things that they should be asking the realtor, what are the things that they should be looking out for when they're looking for apartments. Have they read the lease? Encourage them to visit us in order for us to read it. And are there any illegal fees or clauses in the addendum? Look at the apartment yourself. I know that many of you are not in the Boston area, and that's not possible for you to fly up here to actually see the apartment, and probably your son or daughter may not want that anyway, but have them send you a photo. You know, can they FaceTime you when they're actually in the apartment so they can show it to you? You know, ask them, is it up to code? On our website, we have a number of documents, and one of them is a sheet about codes, about what are all the specific codes that an apartment must fulfill. The bathroom, the kitchen, everything, and that's a good place to start. Fire safety, you know, does it have multiple egresses in case there's a fire? Is your student's bedroom in the attic, and is that something to be concerned about? Is it an actual legal bedroom? And do you need to ask more questions about that? Does your student need to ask more questions to the landlord about the legality of that? Is there enough egresses in order to get out if they need to? So all of these questions are very important. Those are just some of the things that you can do to help your student to find a really a good living situation off campus with good roommates. And we have a newsletter called the Husky Tracks, and I encourage you to sign up for this newsletter. You can sign up for this newsletter right on our website. If you go to our website, you'll go to our homepage, but click on any internal page, and you'll see on the right-hand side a place where you can sign up for our newsletter. We send this out about every 3 weeks, and it's very timely in the sense that in October we send out articles about how to make sure you get all of your security deposit back after you've moved out. So we time our articles according to the cycle of living off campus and what might be happening. Right before the winter break, we did a lot of messaging about heat and making sure students understood, do not turn your heat off before you leave break. I know you think you're going to save money, but your pipes are going to freeze and break. So we really try to give as much pertinent information for that time of year out to students. And so this is a great opportunity for you to also be informed about this information. And if you're ever on campus or you're here and you're helping your student go through this process, stop by our office. We have so much of these resources, such as the code sheet on a physical sheet in our office that you can take home with you, things like that. So please stop in or have your students stop in. And that's it.
Hey, thank you, Rebecca. That was really helpful information as parents and students both begin their search for an off-campus apartment. At this time, we are going to begin taking questions from our audience. Like I had said, on the right-hand screen, part of your screen, the Q&A pod is on the right side. Please type in your questions. We will try to get to as many questions as we can till about 8 o'clock. If your question is unanswered, you can email offcampus@northeastern.edu, and they will make sure they can get to your question. So let's start taking a few of them. Let's talk about, we have a couple parents asking for that database link again, the URL.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe if you could go to that just so that they joined us late, so parents who joined us late can see what that was. And repeat your website again.
Okay, so the database is aptsearch.northeastern.edu.
We have quite a few parents asking, too, about the slides. We are recording this session, and our slides will be up shortly, probably by the end of the week under our Tuesday Talks website, and you can share them with your student, too. So if there are, Rebecca, if there are a few students on a lease, do each of them have to sign, or does it go under one person's name?
That is a great question. So everybody has to sign. So say there are 3 students living together. All of them assigned the lease. Their names should all be on the lease. And the term that's used is jointly and severally, which means that they are all committed to this apartment and through this lease jointly and severally. So if one of those roommates decides that they just don't want to pay rent anymore and move out, the other 2 roommates are still responsible for paying the rent, okay? If that happens or is starting to happen, please have your student contact us immediately because the sooner that we can help advise your student as to what to do, the better it can be. You know, because oftentimes that does happen, but then the landlord might approve for them to replace that roommate with somebody else in order to pay the rest of the rent.
Does every cosigner need another parent's signature? Every student need a cosign?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, okay.
So every student will need their own cosigner.
Okay. Are brokerage fees negotiable?
The answer is yes and no. And I say that because, yes, they're negotiable, but they rarely are. So you can try, but realtors rarely give in to that negotiation. And the reason is because there's so much, unfortunately, there's so much demand in the Boston area for housing that unfortunately it is a realtor and landlord's market. So if your student isn't willing to pay the broker fee, then someone around the corner is. Now, I say that, however, there are, the only people who can charge a broker fee are realtors. If they find an apartment that's just listed by a landlord, so we also have lots of landlords who list apartments on our database. Private landlords who do not have a realtor's license cannot charge a realtor or broker fee. It's kind of the same thing. So they can't charge a fee. So that's one way to avoid that fee, is to just go through a private landlord.
Are there a list of landlords that they shouldn't be doing business with? Do you keep a list of that, or is that something they should come to your office with?
If they are concerned about someone that they're working with, do contact us. We do not have a list or anything that we publish, but if you want to ask us if we've heard of anybody or have had experience with anybody, just call us and ask.
Okay. If there's, let's say there's 3 or 4 students on a lease and one of them does not pay their portion, what does the student do about that? What would you suggest the process for that?
As I mentioned, to come talk to us immediately, because oftentimes it's a communication issue that's not going on, that's happening. If that student can no longer pay the rent or no longer wants to live there, that has to be an open conversation with all of the roommates, so that either a new roommate is found or and that the landlord is also brought into that conversation. Any roommate that signs a lease, they are obligated to pay rent. Legally, they are obligated to pay rent, but because it's jointly and severally, that means everybody is responsible, okay? So every case can be different. So what I'm saying is, do not fret over this. Do not feel like, oh my gosh, this is going to happen to my son or daughter. It is rare, okay? It is rare that a student, just leaves. But if this does happen, just come talk to us immediately, and we can definitely help.
Okay. Most of the leases, students begin looking for September housing right about now, January, February, correct? What about if a student wanted to look for the summer semesters beginning in July? What would your recommendation be?
Yes. My recommendation would be if it depends on the length of that they're looking for. If your student is looking for just summer, so if they're looking from June to say August because they're going away, to study abroad in the fall, so they're just looking for a couple of months, a sublet might be a great option for them. So they could go onto the database and in the filter field, filter out sublets, and they can find a summer sublet. Because of the co-op program here at Northeastern, many students go on co-op. Many students go study abroad. So the volume of sublets that happen here in the local neighborhoods is a lot. So if your son or daughter is either looking for someone to sublet their apartment, or they're looking to sublet a room for just a couple of months, have them come see us because we can help them come up with a plan. As long as your son and daughter starts early in that search, it's almost always successful, and we can help.
So we have a question about security fees. What would you say is the typical security fees in the Boston area, right in the Northeastern area?
You mean, when you say security fee, do you mean the
security deposit? Yep.
Okay. The security deposit is always 1 month's rent. I've never really seen it below that. It's almost always 1 month's rent. So it cannot be more than 1 month's rent. In terms of the security deposit, when your son or daughter moves in on September 1st, the first thing, I cannot stress this enough, the first thing before you move one box into that apartment, what I want your son or daughter to do is to walk through that apartment and take pictures. of every single room, of the floors, of the walls, of the ceiling, everything before their stuff gets moved in. That way they have photo documentation of any damage in that apartment. Okay? They also should receive a condition form, an apartment condition form from their landlord or management company that they have to fill out to say, you know, the pane on this window is broken, the hinge on this kitchen cabinet is loose. That way the landlord or management company knows what they need to fix, and B, what was broken prior to them moving out. The reason I say this is because a year after that, when they move out, say on August 31st, and they move out and they have no documentation that that big scratch in the floor was there when they moved in, they're the ones who will be charged, okay? So you want to make sure that the student A has documentation and that the student tells the landlord about any damage to that apartment the day they move in, so that they protect themselves from any money that could be kept for repairs from their security deposit when they move out.
So does your office provide any crime statistics, or which areas are, you know, more safer to live in or anything like that?
So what I'll say is that we live in a city. It's an urban environment. So no matter where you are, you know, don't walk alone at night. You know, be really vigilant. Do not walk, especially at night, with your earbuds in, not paying attention to your surroundings. That, I can honestly say, is probably the most common cause of something happening, is someone not paying attention. So we're in an urban environment, so just tell your student to be safe and be vigilant and to never walk alone at night. So yes, there are certain areas, but a lot of those areas our students don't live in. You know, most of our students live in the Fenway and Mission Hill area. If you want to know more about the actual crime statistics and things that have happened, you can go to the BPD website. I believe it's bpdnews.com.org, and if you go there, they have a tool where you can look up more crime statistics, and so that's what I would refer you to if you want more of that in-depth data.
Okay. Couple more questions. Do you have a typical range of what a broker's fee would be?
The broker fee is usually 1 month's rent. So it all depends on the rent of the apartment. So say, for example, your son or daughter is renting a 4-bedroom apartment, and that rent is $4,000 a month. So it would be $1,000 per student. That broker fee would be $4,000. So just keep that in mind as as your son or daughter is looking for apartments, that, as I mentioned, the four fees that a realtor can charge: first month's rent, last month's rent, security deposit, and realtor fee. So if your son or daughter's portion of the rent is $1,000, that could be $4,000 up front. So just keep that in mind.
Okay. Does Northeastern, any sororities or fraternities own any housing that students can rent?
No. There is no on-campus or off-campus fraternity or sorority housing. There are members of fraternities or sororities who might live together in an apartment, but it's not a registered house or a recognized house.
Okay, thank you. So September 1, students would be moving back on campus. How aggressively do you really think they should be looking? Should they start that process now?
Yes. So,
and maybe you could get back the apartment fee dates too, if we could go back to that slide. Some people are asking those dates again too.
Which dates?
The apartment fee?
Oh, the apartment fair. Yes. Go ahead.
Just have to put those slides up for a moment. There we are.
Okay, so here's the apartment fair, and then I'm also going to show you the apartment workshop that your student could go to. So this is the fair, which is on February 7th. So the height of the apartment search season is now through February. And that is because the majority of the leases in this area, in the Boston area, have a clause in them that says that the tenants must advise the landlord if they are going to renew their lease by January 1st, January 15th. It's around this time because landlords want to know, are you going to live here next year? And if you're not, I need to know so that I can post this apartment to find new tenants for September 1st. So it's around now that more apartments are going to be coming on the market. So the end of January through February is the height of the season. As I mentioned earlier, do not let your student be pressured by a realtor thinking that if they don't find something this week or take that one apartment that's available that has high rent, they're not going to find a place, because that's not true. So tell them, please do not stress. Please look at a number of apartments before they decide on one. Come to the fair on the 7th, meet a number of realtors, and find something that's in their price range, that's in the quality that they want, in the neighborhood that hopefully they want.
You spoke a lot about this in your presentation about keeping up with repairs if they don't keep up with repairs. What would be the process? Like, how would they make a landlord do those repairs? Do they come to your office, or should they be calling someone else?
Right. So if they're going through that process and they're asking their landlord to make repairs and they're sort of making repairs but not well, and the problem is persisting, come to us, and what we will do is we will sort of assess the situation in terms of what has the communication been. You know, does it seem like the landlord is actually trying to fix this problem? It's just like an old furnace, and you know, he's just trying to fix it until he can get a new furnace in. Or is it a situation where the landlord really doesn't want to spend money and is therefore not fixing it? If that's the case, oftentimes what we do is we help that student write a demand letter. You know, many times these students are speaking with their landlord over the phone or by text, and so nothing is documented, and so that's the biggest thing. So we want to make sure that we then have them start a communication that's formal in a written demand letter that says, this is the problem, this is what we've requested to be fixed, please fix this by X date, and then that way the landlord knows it's serious. The next step, if it still doesn't happen and it's persisting, that's when, you know, we get inspectional services involved. The landlord knows, oh, the city's involved, now the city's telling us we need to fix this. If it still progresses after that, that's when we talk about, is this serious enough that rent needs to be withheld? And I do not recommend any student withholding rent until they talk with us, because that is sort of the last resort. If it is a situation where you know, it's persisting and it's an unsafe environment, do we need to start talking about breaking that lease, and how do we legally go about doing that? So depending on the seriousness of the issue, how long it's been happening for, that's going to all determine the course of action.
So we're almost out of time. We'll take one or two more questions. Like I mentioned, if we do not get to your questions, you can email our office at parents@neu.edu or Rebecca's office, and we will get to your questions. Let's see, a couple more. If someone sublets their apartment, do they also pay a fee? Do they have?
That's a good question. It all depends on what's in the lease. Okay, so a landlord, if your son or daughter is on the lease and they want to sublet their apartment because they're going to Chicago for their wonderful co-op, the only way that a landlord can charge a fee is if that fee is already listed in the lease. Okay, so check the lease. Make sure that your student has a copy of that lease, either hard copy or an electronic copy, and check that lease. If, say, the fee is $500 to sublet the apartment, sometimes the student will pay it, sometimes they will have the person subletting the apartment pay it, although that makes it harder to find a sublet if that subletter is paying an extra fee, or sometimes they'll split it. I think it all depends on how much it is and how much they're willing to pay, and you know, if that cost is going to deter finding a subletter from taking the room.
I did see a few questions tonight regards to on-campus housing, and I would encourage parents to email housing@neu.edu to ask those questions. I saw several questions about when deposits are due, and what happens if a student doesn't find an apartment, then can they go on the wait list. So rather than provide you with wrong information, I think it would be more important to contact that office on your own, or you can let us know and we'll actually seek them out.
And I will note that if your student is unsure whether they want to live on campus or off, to start looking and talking to realtors off campus just to educate themselves, and then we can help them work through that timeline of when deposits are due.
Okay. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. Like I said, if we did not get to your question, please feel free to email us. Rebecca or I will answer your questions. We appreciate you joining us, and we hope you learned lots of information about renting in Boston. The webinar is now ending. At the very end, we will see a survey. We would appreciate any time that you could take to just complete our survey and give us some input on tonight. I do thank you, Rebecca, for taking the time to be here. I think it was great information.
Thank you very much.
Everybody, thank you for joining us, and we'll look forward to you hearing from us on our next Tuesday Talk.